Okay.
Okay. Good to see some of your faces, and if not your faces, your names. I'm always delighted to be in this community because it's a place where I grow a great deal and learn a great deal, but also just find tremendous comfort against the shadows of our world. So tonight I'm going to light a candle for us. Because those shadows are indeed deep and all over the place. And that's some of what gathers us together in this community, right? In this Presbyterian community, in this PPF community, in this moment of wanting to learn better communication skills and ways that we might be good advocates at General Assembly and in the world around us. So I light this candle to feel a little bit of its warmth and notice its glow. And I light this candle to remind us that even in the most dim of spaces, we are not alone. So take a deep breath. And even if you don't have a candle right next to you, I'll share a little bit of this brightness with you tonight. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Colleen. All right, y'all. Let's get this going. My name is Liv. I'm talking to you today from Nashville, Tennessee, where I am finishing up my first year of divinity school at Vanderbilt. Let's see. I'm a student. I am an artist. I'm an organizer. I am a lover of hikes and cats, and candy, particularly like gummy candy. That is me. I'm coming to you at the end of kind of a long day, but I sincerely have been looking forward to talking about this thing that really lights up my world. When community organizing, and specifically this skill, the one-on-one meeting was introduced to me, a lot of things started to make sense. And I started to feel that I had a tool that would help with my anger and frustration and confusion about the way that the world is. So here we are this evening. Before we get deep into things, I'm curious if any of y'all are familiar with the one-on-one meeting or the individual meeting. Is anyone here? I know some people here are familiar with that. Would people indicate in the chat or on video whether they're familiar? I'm seeing David, yes. Colleen, a little bit. So a little bit. Okay. Let's see. I think we got some chats coming in too. A tiny. Yep. Not formally. Cool. Okay. This is great. I think we'll learn something together tonight. That's my sense. So here's the plan. I am committed to keeping this to an hour. We will be wrapping this up at 8 o'clock. That is my commitment to you. That is an act of respect toward you and toward myself. So here's the plan. I'm thinking that for about 20 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more, I will frame and tell you a little bit about what a one-on-one meeting is. And then we will demonstrate, me and a lucky guest will demonstrate a one-on-one meeting. And then we'll reflect a little bit and we'll close out, and that will be your evening. And we can and we will do that in 50 minutes. So if y'all are up for it, let's hop right in, and I'll start framing here. So to me, there are 3 questions that we have to keep in mind when we are approaching the one-on-one meeting. First, what is it? Second, how does it play into the larger body of community organizing? And third, what does this have to do with peacemaking or with church? So what's a one-on-one meeting? What is organizing, and what does the one-on-one meeting have to do with that? And what does this have to do with peacemaking? So Colleen, if you're able, could we start a whiteboard up? Colleen's going to take some notes while I talk. I find that seeing things and hearing them can be helpful to keep you plugged in while you're on Zoom. So Colleen has done a huge help here and is starting to answer one of our first 3 questions. What is community organizing? Here's a helpful quote for us. Community organizing is a way to mobilize disenfranchised people to advocate on their own behalf in relationship to some power structure in order to achieve needed changes. The only addition or augmentation I would make to this definition, which I find helpful, is that the one-on-one meeting can be a tool for all people to advocate for all people, if it is done in a spirit of collaboration and in a spirit of true listening. So a couple more notes on what community organizing is. It's a way for ordinary, everyday people to shift the power from the few into the hands of the many. It is a form of resistance against powerful systems of domination. And it seeks to put social and cultural and political capital back into the hands of the people where it belongs. And really, at its very core, community organizing seeks to empower people to produce solutions to their own problems. It's not a way of coming into someone else's life or someone else's neighborhood and telling them what they need. It's a way of stepping into the abundance of the gifts and the skills and the ways that God is already present for those people and for that community, and saying, what can we do together with what's already here? Let's take stock of the abundance of all of these assets, and let's move toward justice together. One final note on organizing that will tie us into our second question. What is the one-on-one? Organizing is listening. It's not telling. It's not a didactic form of fixing. It's not saviorism. It's listening. That is what the one-on-one meeting is, transitioning into thinking about that. A one-on-one meeting is what it sounds like. It's a meeting that takes place between two people in a one-on-one setting, preferably in a place where you can hear each other and make eye contact and be present with each other. But in our new day and age, it can happen over Zoom. As long as people feel, as both parties feel that they can be heard and feel comfortable engaging in some deep conversation. A one-on-one is an exercise in building trust. It's a way to have a conversation and to go a little bit deeper than the surface level. And as you listen to each other and begin to build trust, that first goal, that's the first goal of the one-on-one, building trust together. A second goal might be to discover each other's motivation to take action. When you have a one-on-one meeting, you want to find out what makes the person sitting across from you feel angry. What makes the person sitting across from you feel excited? What keeps the person sitting across from you up at night? You're meeting to build trust and to get a sense of truly what moves the other person to move. Just a few more notes on what this one-on-one is before I really kind of spell it out in a second. While one person is the inviter and the other the invited to the meeting, it's not an interview. It's not a therapy session in which one person hogs up all the space. If a one-on-one meeting is to work, both parties have to talk. It's a conversation. Vulnerability invites vulnerability. So when we share, when we let other people in, oftentimes it is received as an invitation for them to share and to be let in. All right, and our third framing question, what does this have to do with peacemaking? What does this have to do with church? Here we are at a Presbyterian Peace Fellowship event. it makes sense to spell it out, what this has to do with peacemaking and church by extension. This has everything to do with peacemaking and with church. Peace happens, peace is achieved when we trust one another and when we find out about what is hurting our neighbor, what systems of oppression might be keeping our neighbor from living a full, flourishing life. When we trust one another, when we hear one another's stories, we know what's on the line and we know what we need to do to move toward peace together. And if that's not the work of church, then I really want nothing to do with church. Thank you for these notes, Colleen. So here it is. Things are framed. We have a sense of organizing. We understand that the one-on-one is really the central tool to community organizing. There's no such thing as community organizing without the one-on-one. And we understand that together, these things can help us move toward peace together. So let's get, for a second, into the nitty-gritty of the one-on-one. Let's walk through a format for a one-on-one meeting. I think Colleen's going to start up a new whiteboard. I think it might be a matter of erasing.
Colleen just hit the wrong thing.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, cool. Let's do this. So the format of a one-on-one, there are three parts I like to keep in mind. There's the invitation. There is the conversation or the meeting itself. And then third, and it's important not to forget this part, though it's easy to, is tying in the conversation that you've just had to a future interaction. So part one, the invitation. How in the world do these meetings happen? You know, how do they get set up? Well, you, everybody here who is going to be an expert on one-on-ones by the end of this hour, you invite others to meet with you. And typically those invitations sound something like this. Colleen, you know, we haven't gotten a chance to really get to know each other, but my friend Abby says that you spent some time in Louisiana, and I'm from there actually, and I care a lot about that place, and I'm wondering if you might want to get coffee and talk about your experience there and see if we have anything in common. An invitation consists of pointing out your connection, even if it might seem small or insignificant. If you know a mutual person, if you attend the same church, if you are part of the same peacemaking organization, there's your invitation. And really what the invitation does, among other things, is it lets the invited know that they are important and that they matter and that you value getting to know them. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for the invitation. One additional note I might add actually is it's helpful only if sincere. I would never encourage artifice or flattery, but if sincere, letting the person that you're inviting know that they're an expert about their life or about the thing you want to talk to them about. If I happen to know through Abby that Colleen knows a lot about environmentalism, I might say, I hear you know a lot about this thing that I'm interested in learning more about. Would you be willing to share with me? And again, you know, don't give in to the temptations of flattery, but do say that if you mean it. Find a connection and make it obvious. So our second part of the meeting, the conversation itself. This is the real meat and potatoes of this training here. I'm going to do my best to keep it brief and keep it simple, though. The conversation, as we've talked about, is about getting to know each other, getting to trust each other, and finding out what motivates the invited to move. So that is done by truly, deeply listening and letting your follow-up questions come naturally. If Colleen sits with me and then shares a bit about her time in Louisiana, my response should not be, yep, I really love it there so much. Let me tell you about my experience there. I grew up there. I went to high school there. I used to play on the soccer team, and then I have a lot of friends there, and I went, I should listen to what Colleen has to say and engage with her more, draw her out more, hear about what it is that she liked about the place, or maybe what frustrated her about the place. Certainly, there is space for you to share about yourself in the one-on-one, but hopefully it will be done in a manner that invites further sharing. Yes. Perfect. I'll say a bit more about the conversation in a second, but for now, let's look at the final piece, the wrapping of the one-on-one. Tying in the conversation you just had to some future meeting you might have. Here's how this might sound. Colleen, thank you so much for meeting with me. I'll express a word of gratitude for sharing time. It's no small thing for another person to make time for you in their schedule, and it's always worth it to say thank you. And then you might point toward how you could encounter one another again. What might pull you into the same space again? So you might say, Colleen, I would love to invite you to this organizing group I myself am involved in. I think you might get a lot out of it. It really sounds like it's aligned with your motivations and goals. We meet on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Or you might say, thank you so much for your time. I know that we'll cross paths in the future, and I can't wait to work together or think together. Really, the wrap up to the conversation has to reflect the conversation itself. You can't go in there with one already formulated. But keep in mind that the point of the conversation is to figure out ways that you might work together in the future to move toward peace, to act for justice. So always have an invitation in your back pocket to meet again, or to meet at another meeting, or to say, this meeting was not really what I wanted it to be, and instead just say, thank you for your time. I hope you have a lovely day, and move on. Not every one-on-one is going to be totally revolutionary, and that is okay. That is part of the revolution. Okay, so there's a little brief teaching for you. The last thing I'd like to do before a miniature demonstration happens is to do a quick kind of a little T-chart of what a one-on-one is and what a one-on-one isn't. Just so we can one more time visualize. I know this is a lot of information, but I think this will help. I think this might help solidify things. So we'll do a new whiteboard and some quick points, and then I'll take a breath and ask for your feedback. So here's a quick what a one-on-one is and what a one-on-one isn't. First, what a one-to-one is it is an opportunity to build trust. It is an opportunity to dream about action that you can take together. It is an opportunity to build a new relationship. And now let's hop over to what a one-on-one is not. This is going to be some new info coming your way. A one-on-one meeting is not, it's not a therapy session. Some of us might be professionally trained as therapists, but this meeting is not that. Certainly intense, vulnerable, heavy sharing will happen. That it always does. But it's not your role in this moment in time to ask people to share things that they might not feel comfortable with, especially if it's a first meeting. It's not your role to fix people's lives. It really never is. But it's certainly not the point of this meeting. A therapy session in some ways might sound like a one-on-one, but keep in mind your goal here is to think about future collaboration and ways that you might work together for justice. A one-on-one is not an interview. And what do I mean by that? It's not an interview in that you walk into the coffee shop and you sit down and you pull out your list of pre-written questions that you will run through one by one and ask the person sitting across from you. It's not an interview because you too should be sharing. Again, vulnerability invites vulnerability. So I've heard before people have said, it should be about a 70% listening and a 30% sharing. You're doing 70% of the listening, 30% of the sharing. I think a 60-40 is a more realistic and honestly healthier ambition. Do a little bit more listening than sharing. It's an opportunity for you to get to know the person across from you. And also an invitation for them to feel heard. It is not a time to be distracted. In these meetings, picking up your phone, and even if it's sending just a quick text, it can really suck the air out of the room, especially if you're deep in conversation or if that person is starting to open up and talk to you about why gun violence breaks their heart. Pulling out your phone and scrolling through Instagram or sending a text message can really shift the energy of the room. So I highly encourage you to just put your phone face down and pick it up when your time with the other person is over. The last thing I'll share that is certainly not. It's not a time to make a pitch, especially if it's your first meeting with that person. While the goal is to, as I've said, build trust and work toward acting for justice together, people know, people can feel, we all can feel when we're about to have something sold to us. And this meeting is not necessarily the place for you to try to persuade someone into believing something or buying something that they naturally wouldn't. Now, sure, I can invite Colleen to a meeting I genuinely think that she will get something out of and find fulfilling and meaningful. But if it turns out that I was kind of wrong and Colleen doesn't really care much about environmentalism and in fact likes to dump oil into the oceans, then making a pitch to her about collaborating on an environmental organizing group it's not the time or place. So I suppose the easiest thing to say about the pitch thing is read the room. Don't try to persuade people into things that might be saved for another sort of conversation. Okay, that is just so much information I've thrown at you in 20 minutes. So I'm going to take a breath and a sip of my beer and ask if anybody has any questions, any noticing. Is there anything that I can clarify?
I think when I've been in these kinds of conversations, I'm always tempted to kind of go in and over prepare because I am often anxious about meeting a new person. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that. Sorry, I just saw the chat. Classic Colleen hates trees. I don't hate trees.
Drinks crude oil
But if
every morning.
you could speak a little bit to just sort of that natural, like what meeting someone is hard, and
Yes.
how to sit with that well in this kind of formal arrangement.
Yes, that's such a great question. The person who introduced me to organizing and one-on-one conversations is actually our good friend Lucy Wachter-Webb. And I remember telling her when she was telling me about this skill that I didn't really want to do this, and that meeting new people made me feel nervous, and I just felt like I was going to sweat a lot. And she said lovingly, too bad you got this. She encouraged me to see it as an opportunity to learn. And when it's framed that way, I can do that. I love to learn. I love to listen. I love to ask big questions. My friends often poke fun at me for just kind of going there in seemingly random times. So I think framing it as an opportunity to walk away with some new stories and with a new perspective totally makes me feel more relaxed about it. If I can put aside needing to be right or prove my point, and instead just say, what a delight it is to have the opportunity to learn about someone new. Oh, it's exciting. It's the possibility is inviting. I think that's what I'd say. How would y'all feel about a brief demonstration? I'm thinking maybe 10 minutes, and then we'll wrap up and we'll call it a night. Sound good? Okay. I'm wondering if anyone would volunteer to do a mini one-on-one with me. I will lead the way. I will keep you safe, and you do not have to share anything that doesn't feel comfortable or appropriate for you. We'll keep it again to about 10 minutes. And yeah, what do y'all think? Anybody up for it? Ooh, formulating.
I am on standby, Liv, and I did talk about it ahead of time, so no pressure if anybody is worried about what this looks like.
Always eager to learn about Colleen, more about Colleen.
And I'm happy to as well.
Rock on! Cool. Great. Let's go ahead and do this. I'd be happy to demonstrate the invitation. So, David, you and I ran into each other actually at, I think it was GA 223. And what I remember is you wearing amazing tie-dye t-shirts. And I think you were working with a group called the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship. Is that right, David?
All accurate.
All accurate. Well, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to sit down with me for just a couple minutes and tell me a little bit more about that organization, PPF. Would you be willing to tell me some more?
Sure.
That'd be great. Okay. Now we're in a new place and we're having cappuccino.
Where's my coffee?
And yes, what did you order?
Mocha.
Mocha.
Always a mocha.
Ooh, nice. Good on ya. So thank you so much for sitting with me today. Being mindful of your time. I think I'm hoping to sit with you for about 35 or 40 minutes today and just hear more about really what got you connected to PPF. Would you be willing to tell me about that story?
Sure. I think that I first got connected with PPF through Christian Peace Witness for Iraq in 2006-ish. I can't remember. I think the very first thing the first sort of formal connection was at a big event at the National Cathedral. And the thing that I remember most, I mean, I remember a lot about that evening, but I think the thing that as a Presbyterian and as particularly at that point as a leader in a congregation, the thing that I remember thinking was really amazing and also kind of hilarious was that Rick Ufford Chase, the role he played in the worship service that night was simply calling the offering. And he called the offering and got a standing ovation. And I thought, that's the most awesome Presbyterian thing ever.
Wow, that's amazing. So you mentioned Presbyterian Peace Fellowship, and then another organization called, was the Christian?
It was Christian Peace Witness for Iraq, which was it was not an organization. It was always intentionally not an organization, but it was a coalition of Christian peace fellowships, essentially. So the Baptist Peace Fellowship and the Episcopal Peace Fellowship and lots of others.
It sounds like, so both of these are religiously affiliated, and I'm wondering, for you, what does peacemaking have to do with church or religion for you? You know, I grew up in Louisiana, and those two things weren't necessarily talked about in the same sentence. You know, church was a little bit more about, to be honest with you, I never could quite tell what it was about. It seemed to be about reading a part of the Bible and maybe reflecting a little bit on it, but talking about peace or justice or the Iraq War certainly wasn't part of it. So how do those two things make sense in your mind, peacemaking and church?
Jesus.
Hmm.
That's and that really is. I mean, if it were not for Jesus, I would have walked away from the whole church thing a really, really, really long time ago. But there's something about that figure that has called me back to the faith community and in particular the Jesus people community over and over and over since I was a kid. And peacemaking has always seemed to me the central part of the calling of followers of Jesus. That both on a deeply personal level, the peace that passes understanding is something that followers of Jesus find in the following of Jesus in community. So on a very personal level, that aspect of peacemaking, but on the much broader social level, all of the different aspects of seeking shalom, communion and wholeness and well-being in community has always seemed to me to be what trying to follow Jesus in community is about.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. And I have to say, I hear a lot of what you're saying is resonating for me, actually. To kind of return back to my religious roots, Jesus was always like a super muscular white guy who, I don't know, seemed to like be rich people's number one. At least growing up, that's how Jesus was presented to me. And I really had my eyes open and my world rocked when I encountered a liberationist interpretation of the Bible. And I heard that Jesus stood always with the marginalized and the cast out and the least of these. And I couldn't believe it because I'd never heard that before, but I liked this version so much more. And it raised a question for me that honestly I'm still sitting with, and I wonder if you could help me with. Why do some churches try to cloak that version of Jesus? Why do some churches try to, I don't know, like act like Jesus wasn't a troublemaker and act like Jesus wasn't seeking justice and standing with the poor? And and to cast out? Why do people try to obscure that?
Isn't that a darn good question?
Yeah,
Yeah. What do you think?
Hmm.
In your experience in those communities, what was motivating that?
Hmm.
Um,
That's a great question. I think my best guess would be, it's served. What is it's served their interest. It served their self-interest to have a Jesus that was about, or is at least supportive of making money, accumulating wealth, going along with the status quo. Yeah, I guess what I'm hearing you ask me is like, what did those people need Jesus to be? And I think my answer is a guy that let them do kind of what they wanted and to carry on as things were.
and bless it too. Don't forget blessing it.
Yeah. Oh. Well, Fiend, I think the thing that I might say to wrap up this mini one-on-one would sound something pretty close to we have a lot to talk about. I think we have similar relationships to Jesus, and mine is still really in kind of a nascent stage, and I'm still figuring out a lot of stuff about my theology and about Jesus. Where could I encounter you again, David? Do you work around here, or do you serve a church around here? I would love to
well, let me invite you into the work of the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship.
Oh, I'd be honored. Yay! Thank you very much for being up for that demonstration. I'd say we did a great job. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yes.
So, wrapping our evening up here, I'm wondering, what did people notice? Those of us who were not in the mini one-on-one, did anything stand out to you about that conversation, or about what I shared with you before that, when I was teaching a little bit about the one-on-ones? Anything stand out?
One thing did to me before we started,
What's that?
that was the sort of reminder that particularly in an initial one-on-one, you're not selling something. And to me, that's one of, I mean, hearing Colleen's, and I share this, like, meeting new people is a scary thing. But there's a lot less pressure if you're not trying to get them to do something. If you really are authentically just trying to learn about them and build a relationship, and you're not really trying to convince them to do something, then, I mean, it's very low risk, and that makes it easier for me to make the invitation in the first place.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that great question that led to that, Colleen.
I see Abby wrote in the chat, being clear about what it's not, and the fact that you set the time limit at the beginning when you were telling David kind of what you were doing was a really nice boundary. So kind of setting up those boundaries ahead of time. What I noticed, honestly, was that trust building that you talked so much about. I saw that trust. You kind of took the chance when David invited you back on your own hard question. You took the chance to trust him in sharing a part of you. And I thought there was really good balance between the listening, but also the participating actively so that it could go on and build.
I agree. See, anything else? Any other noticings? I'll also ask, are there any other questions? We're nearing kind of the end of our time today. I'm delighted to say we got through this pretty quickly, and I think all of our attention spans are probably grateful. So any final questions before we? Yeah, I see a couple hands before we reflect and close. What's up, Abby and Allison? Whomever would like to go first.
I'll go. This is Allison. I am grateful for this time and teaching and feeling additional clarity about one-on-ones and organizing. I'm wondering, thinking about doing one-on-ones in the context of an organization where like, my question is about how to like take notes or report back from a one-on-one in a way that safeguards the like trust and confidentiality. Because thinking about doing it in the context of an organization, like if David had said, oh, wow, I would be really interested in, I'm really motivated by defunding fossil fuels or divesting from fossil fuels, that would be a pertinent piece of information to communicate to fossil-free PCUSA, for example. And I'm wondering like if there are like best practices around doing that.
Yeah, this is such a great, rich question. I kind of hear maybe two distinct answers that I might offer. You will certainly, in a one-on-one meeting, learn a lot and want to remember a lot of it. But I would really encourage you to steer away from taking notes on your phone or even on a notepad, and instead put down on paper whatever you'd like to remember after the meeting. Anything that gets between you and the person you're speaking to could serve as a distraction and can serve as a kind of a breach of the trust that is starting to be built. And trust, especially initially, is very fragile. So I encourage you to take notes after you leave. And I think this kind of maybe seems obvious, but only share that person's information or connect them if they consent to that sharing or that connection. You might leave the meeting and then over text or over email or over a phone call say, David, you're still on my mind after our conversation, and I particularly this thing you mentioned that I think would really set you up well to fit right in with this hippie group of Presbyterians. Would you be interested in me connecting you? Yeah, is that helpful? Does that get to your question, Allison?
Yeah, totally. And I appreciate having the like obvious things said explicitly so that I have it clearly in my mind. So thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Can I jump on that too?
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think one of the things that, as I am doing a bunch of conversations with people in PPF, is to be real clear. And I'm trying to start each of these by saying, this is why I'm doing this, and this is whom I'm going to share it with, so that people know up front what the purpose of the conversation is, and where it's going to go and how it's going to be used.
Yes, that is such a great reminder, and I'm really glad that you brought this up and that we didn't conclude this training without you saying that, because fact of the matter is that like oftentimes people are trying to sell stuff or have ulterior motives, and it feels kind of weird when someone just really actually wants to get to know you and build trust and think about ways that you might collaborate together in the future. It can kind of feel off-putting. I think particularly if you're talking to people who exist outside of the nonprofit world, maybe in the corporate world, it's kind of like, what do you really want from me? And saying at the outset, what I want is to get to know you and to just have some space here together so that we might see where this conversation leads us. Saying that at the beginning can totally depressurize the conversation, and wonderful things happen when you state your goals. So thank you for bringing that up. Abby, what's up? I know that you've had your virtual hand up.
I wonder if we could just really briefly talk about the instances in PPF right now where we might do one-on-ones. What the value of doing them would be at this time and place in PPF.
Yes, I think I will look to Colleen to help me answer this question.
Thanks. So I think the reason we brainstormed this training in particular is thinking about the relationship building that needs to go on in advocacy work that This is one of our General Assembly trainings, so we're certainly thinking about it with that lens and with that eye toward how do we communicate to people why this is important to peacemaking regarding all kinds of different policies. So we wanted to have a training and be thoughtful about how to have those conversations, that those conversations aren't just a sales pitch, but are about curiosity and learning about things from one another and supporting one another, not just getting an advocacy point across. And totally contrary to all of this talk about not making a sales pitch, I was asked to make a pitch this evening that one place that you can use these skills or practice these skills is PPF's Peace Fractals project. Lucy Wachter-Webb is leading that, and I'm going to put her email address in the chat. It's lucy@presbypeacefellowship.org. She'd be glad to hear from you if you're interested in making a few of these calls. But they've been exactly what Liv described, just relationship building. I've been on this team and made a few of these calls, and it's been incredible to hear some of these stories about peacemaking. And remember why I'm connected to this community and remember how that inspires me in my everyday work. So I think I answered your question, but just want to check in that I did actually answer your question, Abby.
Yeah, I mean, I also was thinking about how like one-on-ones are good as we're getting ready for GA, and like starting to prep people to give testimony at General Assembly, or I want to say this as delicately as possible, because a one-on-one isn't a time to sell something. It is a time to get to know somebody so that then you can make an appropriate ask during like fundraising time. But a one-on-one isn't when you're
and figuring out how to work together, which happens in all kinds of different ways, right? Working together is not just you're going to agree with me and help this particular thing happen. It's where is our common ground and what can we accomplish together?
Yeah, and like it can lay the ground so that then you know who the people are, so you can be like, oh, I know that Annika like really loves the Guns to Garden work. She might be somebody who would like to make a gift to Guns to Gardens, but you wouldn't do that in the context of the one-on-one. The one-on-one gives you the context to know that Annika might be joyful about that.
Yeah. Common ground to build on.
I would say what Colleen said brought two things to mind. One is just if you haven't had the peace fractal conversation, that on either end of it, it's really rich. So I underscore do that if you get a chance, because it's fun. It's a fun conversation and it's really rich. The other thing is that one of the things I am hearing a lot in the last couple of weeks of conversations is the importance in a moment of transition organizationally to strengthen relationships, and one-on-one conversations are just a fantastic way to do that. So that in and of itself, I think is a really significant purpose for making the effort.
All right, y'all.
I see we're getting close to the hour, so I would love to close us in prayer. If you have particular prayer concerns or joys you might like lifted up, you are welcome to drop them in the chat and I will include them. But I'll invite you to take a deep breath. And remember, you are not alone. And pray with me. God of the shadows and the light, we give you thanks for soil and skies, wetlands and watersheds, little wildflowers and towering trees, all creatures great and small, and for all of us gathered here online and in spirit and well beyond. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We pray for our friends and for our families. We pray for our neighbors and our enemies. We pray for those sick in body, mind, and spirit. for our congregations and seminaries and presbyteries, synods, General Assembly, all of our committees. We pray for our communities, our countries, and our world, and all of the leaders and representatives. We pray for the particular issues before Presbyterian Peace Fellowship, for immigration and environmental justice, international relations, gun violence prevention, for power dynamics. Oh God, we thank you for the energy, intelligence, imagination, and love that drive us to put action to these words in our church, in your church, and in our world. God bless and keep us this night and always, and hear us as we pray together in whatever words or language feels most familiar, the way your Son Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Peace be with you all.
Thanks, friends.
Peace, y'all. Good night.
You want to stop the recording and hang for 1 second, Liv?